We thespians believe it's bad luck to mention the name of this particular play out loud.
You mean Macbeth?
Quiet, you blundering fool! You'll curse us all!
What, by saying Macbeth?
Stop saying it!
Saying what?
Macbeth! Now I've said it.
Oh, this is cool. Macbeth, Macbeth, Macbeth! Bart, stop saying Macbeth!
Mom, you said Macbeth.
Mr. Macbeth, I'm really sorry.
Macbeth is thought to have been first performed in 1606, around the time King James I took the throne. It's speculated that Shakespeare wrote this play specifically for the king, since he was patron of Shakespeare's acting company. Like many of Shakespeare's plays, this one is based on some historical events from England, Scotland, and Ireland. The play itself is drastically different from what actually happened, like many of Shakespeare's other plays. This one is also Shakespeare's shortest tragedy, which is a surprise, as you'd think Romeo and Juliet would be the shortest tragedy. And yes, the name Macbeth is thought to be cursed, so many will call it the Scottish play since the play is set in Scotland. Alright, that's enough history lesson, let's get to the story you all want to hear. The play starts with three witches planning to meet up with Macbeth. Then it cuts to a scene of King Duncan receiving news that Macbeth and his friend Banquo have successfully defeated the armies of Norway and Ireland. Then we cut to Macbeth and Banquo on their way home, where they're just hanging out, and then the witches appear! Banquo reacts as anyone who sees witches would do and tries to challenge them. The witches hail Macbeth as Thane of Glamis, Thane of Cawdor, and later, King. The witches say that Banquo will never become king, but will father a line of kings. Then they leave. Macbeth and Banquo think the prophecy is not too important until their friend Ross comes by with news from the king saying that the original Thane of Cawdor was executed for being a traitor and the king gave the title to Macbeth. Macbeth is now getting excited about the possibility of being king since Duncan hasn't named his heir yet. King Duncan praises Macbeth for his might and right then declares his heir to be his son, Malcolm. Duncan also wants to spend the night at Macbeth's castle, so Macbeth sends a message to his wife, known throughout the play as Lady Macbeth, about the king coming over to stay in the whole shenanigans with the witches. Lady Macbeth believes it's a great idea for her husband to murder the king and take the throne, because who wouldn't want to be queen? She tells Macbeth such, and he's not really sure since he doesn't have any problem with Duncan, and they're not just friends, they're family. Lady Macbeth literally tells him he's not man enough to get the job done. That persuades Macbeth to plan with her to get the guards really drunk and pin the blame of the murder on them since they wouldn't remember anything the next morning. Macbeth does the deed of killing the king, despite starting to feel a supernatural presence and seeing a hallucination of a bloody dagger. The vision affects him so much that he goes back to his wife and she has to do the job of planting the evidence now. The next morning, two more nobles, Lennox and Macduff, arrive. Macbeth takes them to the king's chamber where they find him dead. Now, Macbeth has actually murdered the guards so that they don't tell the truth, but since everyone is a little suspicious of that, Macbeth just says he did it in a fit of rage, because they all think they did it. Now, news of the king's death reaches the ears of his sons Malcolm and Donalbain, who decide the best course of action is to flee to England and Ireland since they think that whoever killed the king may be after them as well. Now, Macbeth uses this opportunity to claim that they were the murderers since they fled. Well, with the heirs to the throne gone and Macbeth being a kinsman of Duncan, he takes the throne. But all is not peaceful as Banquo remembers what the witches said and is now very suspicious of Macbeth. Well, Macbeth remembers that the witches also prophesied that Banquo would father kings. Now, Macbeth doesn't want Banquo's kids to be kings. He wants his own kids to be kings. So Macbeth arranges Banquo and his son Fleance to be murdered. Banquo is killed, but Fleance manages to escape. Macbeth is not pleased. Later at a little party, Macbeth sees Banquo's ghost in his chair. Now, Macbeth is the only one who can see him and starts freaking out. Everyone is confused since all they see is their king screaming at a chair. Lady Macbeth tells everyone to leave, saying that Macbeth is simply ill. Meanwhile, with the witches, Hecate comes by and tells them all that they need to give Macbeth a false sense of security. Now, Macbeth comes by and asks the witches what he can do to secure his kingship. The witches tell him to beware of Macduff and that no man born of woman can hurt him. They also state that Macbeth will be safe until the Great Birnam Wood comes to Dunsinane Hill. Macbeth is no longer concerned and then asks the witches if Banquo's descendants will become kings. A vision shows that they do, and the people of Shakespeare's time know this prophecy to be true since King James is supposedly a descendant of Banquo, who, as a reminder, was an actual person. The witches leave, and Lennox tells Macbeth that Macduff fled to England, so Macbeth decides the best course of action is to murder Macduff's entire household. Later on, Lady Macbeth is super guilty about everything that's happened. She starts seeing things and sleepwalking. One of the things she sees is bloodstains on her hands that she wants to wash away. The doctor, who is making sure she's fine, recommends spiritual help since the issue is in the mind. So yeah, she's got insane. Meanwhile, in England, Macduff learns that his entire household is dead, and vows revenge! He meets up with Malcolm, and they rally an army to go fight Macbeth. Apparently, some of the Scottish nobles want to get rid of Macbeth too, since he's become tyrannical. The army camps in Birnam Wood, and is encouraged to use tree branches and such to camouflage their presence. Back to Macbeth. He learns that his wife has killed herself, and is very sad about it. He reflects on his choices leading up to this point and gets scared when he gets news saying that Birnam Wood has started moving because of the army and their shields from the wood. The battle is fierce, and everybody wants to try to kill Macbeth, but he cannot be killed. At least, not by men born of women. Now, Macduff over here is ready to challenge Macbeth, but Macbeth is like, haha, you can't kill me, no man born of woman can kill me. Well, Macduff was born via C-section, which was not considered born of woman back then. The phrase born of woman in Shakespeare's day means born via natural birth. Back to the story, it seems Macbeth has misinterpreted the witch's words and is very screwed now. Macbeth is not willing to surrender, and Macduff kills him and beheads him. Order has been restored, and Malcolm takes his rightful place as King of Scotland. Well, that was something. Let's get to the analysis. Okay, let me get this out of the way real fast. I'm sure many of you are familiar with stories involving prophecy and things not ending well. That was a common form of storytelling in the Greek era. One example would be Oedipus Rex. I'm actually not going to review that one on Masters of Literature for specific reasons I will not disclose here. The reason I bring it up is because that is an example of a work where a prophecy is told at the beginning and everyone tries their best to avoid the prophecy happening, but they end up making the prophecy happen. With Macbeth, he's trying everything in his power to make the prophecy happen at first, but then he tries everything in his power to stop the prophecy and fails miserably. Honestly, this story would be very different if Macbeth just decided, you know what? This State of Cawdor thing is probably just a coincidence. I'm just gonna let things happen. And he had the power to tell his wife, you know what? No, I don't care what you think of me for not doing this. If you don't like it, get out of my house. But he didn't, because maybe he too wanted to gain kingship. Now, here's something I don't see often in media. The main protagonist starts out as a great hero, but slowly becomes a villain toward the end. It's interesting to see. He starts out highly praised by the king and revered as this fantastic hero, but by the end, most of Scotland wants him out since he's been arranging accidents on people. Now let's talk about Lady Macbeth for a minute. I think she saw what Macbeth saw. We don't get a whole lot of information about her descent into madness, but I think that she saw the ghosts of the people who died at Macbeth's hands. I think the first night this happened, she probably told the ghosts that Macbeth was the one who killed them, not her. But she knew she was the one who arranged their deaths. She was the one who instigated this whole thing due to ambition. There's so much more I could talk about here, but that would be a whole video by itself. I freaking love this play. It's one of my favorite Shakespeare tragedies. This play has been adapted into many films and has been performed a lot. Also, let's talk about the superstition here real quick. It is believed that Shakespeare used real witch spells in his text, which made the witches angry and they cursed the play. So now every time an actor says the name of the play out loud, the performance is doomed to go horribly wrong. With that understanding, please be nice to your theater friends and don't say the name of the play out loud before a performance. I'd recommend this play for ages 15 and up. I did read this in my sophomore year of high school, and that was when I really started to understand Shakespeare's language. It is still hard to understand because of the Shakespeare language, but don't worry. If you have good enough resources, you'll be able to pick it up. I believe in you. Well, that was Macbeth. I hope you will enjoy this play as much as I did. Happy reading, everyone!
Only got one thing to say to you. Macbeth!